Hey friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been quite a week and I thought for today I'd try something a little bit different. I am going to be showing you my entire process on this video, which is just a sketch in my sketchbook. The opening few seconds we're really kind of showing you the overview so you know roughly what we're building towards, but you're welcome to fast forward to the end to see how it really turns out when it's completed. But I just thought I'd talk through it and also just give some updates on my life. I had a really interesting week this past week. It's been about a week since I had released when I'm recording this, it's been about a week since I released my first Spoonflower video, which weirdly did really well. So, I mean, I'm thrilled, don't get me wrong, but I've been puttering along here, not really growing all that fast. And it was really fun to see a lot of people come to that video. Lots of strong perspectives on Spoonflower but also a lot of curiosity about how to make patterns. So that was great. And I did a follow-up on Monday with some more technical aspects of how I create those repeats. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go back and take a look. And then I also on Tuesday had my pattern workshop, which was a thing that I did in real time. There will be a link. I can actually put a link in this video as well, since I'm talking about it, even though I'm currently working on a landscape for all of you to enjoy. But that was a great session. We had about 25 people in the room, and I think about 25 people have watched so far on the replay. So that's pretty awesome. And in that session, we actually made patterns together. So, many of you know that I love making art in my journal. I especially love making patterns and landscapes. And so it's just fun to see some of that coming together. So yeah, so it's been quite a week. Right now you can see on this piece that I'm working on right now on the time lapse, I had laid down a background of orange, very rough, not particularly smooth or even. That's kind of by design. I like it to be a little bit messy. I think that adds some visual interest. After the background dried, I went in and had some distant hills in that light blue and then slightly darker blue as that you come forward. And I'm now laying in some of the closer in hills in the reds and the oranges and the greens that we're seeing now for this time of year in this part of the world. So this process overall took me a little over an hour plus some drying time. And when I recorded this, I sort of had this idea in my head that I was going to post it in its entirety in the amount of time it took me. So it would have been about an hour of a video. And then I thought to myself, gosh, that is just way too long. Who is going to sit through that? So I decided to do this as a time lapse and to edit some of the scenes out or some of the details out. Just because I feel like even, once you sort of get a sense of the direction I'm going, I feel like it's enough. But of course, I would love to hear from you guys. If you feel like you'd like to see it in real time, or in the amount of time it actually took me. I'm getting confused about time sequences now, but let me know in the comments. I'd be curious what folks prefer. In some ways it's helpful to sort of watch artists. I know I enjoy certain things in real time, but I also know that sometimes I am just so busy that I really only have time for about a 12-minute video. And so I'm just trying to do what might be interesting for you guys. It may depend on the day, and that's okay too. But if you have any thoughts on that, let me know. I'll keep kind of playing around with the formats for these videos until I find what I feel like makes me happiest. I feel like I can't talk when I am painting. It's really hard for me to concentrate while I'm actually doing that. And I end up with a lot of filler words and things that are hard to listen to. If anybody has any tips for how to, combat that and to be able to talk and to paint at the same time, let me know. Otherwise, I might continue to do these voiceovers because I think that they're helpful. Speaking of the voiceover, so as you can see, I got to the foreground. There are some sort of farmers' hills here and a field where there was a fair bit of kind of striping from the most recent mowing. And while it is late fall, there is a bit of green and there's a lot of kind of that orange peeking through, as well as some sort of shrubs coming up through the undergrowth. So that's what I'm just trying to lay in here very, very, very roughly. And just playing also with having the brightest, kind of most vibrant greens towards the front, which gives you that sort of sense of foreground. So that's kind of where we are on this one. In terms of my materials, you can see that I've got a kind of roughly water fast palette on the right, and that is my gouache. This is regular gouache, it is not acrylic gouache. That is my usual go-to gouache palette. I keep it with me most of the time. I do not fly with it because it doesn't hold up well when you turn it upside down. It does leak. The wells do leak into each other. They're not actually individually sealed like some of the other tools that I have. But I do really like using it in general for gouache when I'm just around home, and even on sort of driven, like if I'm driving someplace, I'll bring this because I know I can keep it upright and manage it with no problem. And it's a great way to transport a wide variety of colors. Now, I do think you can do a lot with a limited palette, but it's nice to have this all available all the time. On the left, you can see in my hand, I'm actually holding on to what I love to use for mixing. It's an empty watercolor palette. I'll put links for both of these down below. I really love that one. You can see that I almost never clean it when I hold it in front of the camera. And that means I often am needing a third surface to mix up, especially the whites. But I don't mind that it gets some layers. I think that it really is a good spot for some neutral colors. I like that my colors become a little bit more muted. I'm not a fan of the super bright primaries. I think that the more that the colors actually kind of contaminate each other, it adds a lot to the unification of the paints and the appearance of the, everything in the painting. So sorry, I was distracted by the whites. I actually quite like the way that contrast is really coming out. So those are my materials. In terms of paintbrushes, honestly, I buy really cheap paintbrushes. I like a stiffer brush. I don't like brushes that are too soft. I tend to work with round brushes more often than flat, although sometimes I work with flat brushes because I know I should, and I always like the result, but I get a little bit lazy. I don't really, I feel like Blick Studio is great. I feel like those blue ones that are always on sale in packs of 6 or 10, those are great. Honestly, I'm not at all fussy about brushes. And so that's something, if you're fussy about brushes, awesome. Put down below in the comments what you use, because I'm always looking for wonderful supplies. But I have found that these do the job and I'm pretty happy with them. But everybody's going to have their own approach. You're probably going to want to try different things out and see where you land. Okay, so I just went in and added the houses that are sort of in the mid-ground. It's a couple of houses, some barn structures, a shed. It looks like maybe a garage. And you'll note that I am not at all precise with what I have laid in there. Very rough shapes. Not really worried about getting the architectural details perfectly right. Adding some detail in the foreground, just adding some brushiness in the field, and just trying to create this scene of, a sort of upstate New York morning or afternoon. You'll see what I do with the sky shortly if you guys want to stick around for that. And I really just wanted to sort of capture the feel of this place. I'm going back in now, as you can see, with going back in to actually add even more some pale highlights. I think there was some snow the other night in the hills, and so just trying to capture some of that contrast, which is again adding some layers that just make the scene kind of hold together, I think, from my perspective. Once I felt as though the structures had dried, I went back in with some darks. So some of the sheds and the barn structures are actually very dark, and so you'll see I go in a couple of times, starting with a nice gray and then building up to some darker layers. There are some shadows and some darker roofs. There are some interesting architectural details that I was trying to convey in just very, very simple ways and terms. And, this is really sort of the direction that I decided to go. I love the layers of those houses, the way they're sort of nested. It's almost like Russian dolls. And, I'm just really trying to get that sense of the sort of cluster of houses in this hillside. Now I'm coming back with some darker darks, trying to capture both some of the sort of shaded areas like the entrance of a garage. Also, the windows have shutters that were actually dark. I'm not getting a precise likeness, but you kind of get the sense of the windows on each of those little structures. And without being super precise, I'm kind of bringing the idea across. That garage is just a couple of little squares, and the dormers and the roof on the farthest house, again, just a couple of little details, not at all precise. And I can always go back in after everything darkens up to create more shape and exactitude. So here I'm going back in to show some of the detail of the road. Most specifically, I am going back to create the telephone poles and the wires. And you'll see that in a second after I just do a little highlight on some of these structures. But the thing that is interesting is I used to sort of, not like landscapes, or I can't say I didn't like landscapes. I didn't like when I was trying to paint something that I would set up and then I would suddenly realize there were all of these like wires or, the telephone pole was in the way of like what I thought was really the most important view. And I think, I've done some stuff with the Urban Sketchers and I really enjoy that community. I think they're great. And one of the things I've learned from some of those incredible artists is how beautiful actually some of those details can be. So rather than avoiding the telephone poles and the wires and the sort of industrial things that, at first I thought were sort of marring a landscape, I've really found that if I embrace it and include it in some rough and messy way in the landscapes that I'm creating, I end up liking it more. So what do you think? Tell me in the comments if you enjoy incorporating telephone poles and wires and things like that, or if you're more of a purist and like to have an unfettered view. Are you more of an urban sketcher, or are you more of a like a wilderness landscape artist? Either way is great. I think it's a personal preference thing. And frankly, there's a time and place for all of it. If I'm in the middle of Yosemite Valley, then I definitely want to just have the gorgeous rock formations and, the incredible valley structure and all that kind of stuff. But for this, where it's just it's Route 209 outside of Kingston, kind of adds a lot. All right. So now we've gotten to the point where I need to make the sky. And you'll see here that I decided to do some test sheets because I didn't want to screw it up. And, I think I might do a whole video just for my own benefit, selfishly, on doing skies because I wanted this one to be very moody. I didn't want it to be a flat sky. I wanted to have some clouds. I knew I wanted to have kind of that dark underbelly on some of the clouds and very vibrant, kind of almost a yellowy white on top, and also have some sort of moody blue. So that's why I did those cards. They were just little exercises to see where I landed. And now I felt like I liked the first approach better. So I'm going in now with a very, very, very pale, pale, pale blue that will be the baseline for what I am trying to accomplish with the sky. Honestly, I always enjoy this moment with painting landscapes this way. It just, some people will start with the sky. I find that actually ending with the sky is really satisfying because the picture just doesn't seem super complete until you start to block in the sky, and then suddenly the values make sense and it kind of pulls it together. This one I have chosen to do a kind of a, I don't know, I guess I'd call it, is it natural color? It's color natural to the scene. So I'm not using colors that are non-visible. In other words, I didn't go abstract and turn the sky pink or green or some other thing like that. And so I was trying to stay relatively realistic, still very sketchy and kind of abstract in terms of the representation, but didn't go out on some crazy limb with the color choices that I've made on this particular spread. All right, well, we are in the home stretch now. Thank you so much for watching. If you are still here, thank you. If you have yet to subscribe, please do hit that button. It does help with the channel. And I guess I'll leave you with one question if you think to respond down below in the comments. If you could pick one view to paint every week or every day, if you're so inclined to make art every day, what would that view be? Would it be a view like this one? Would it be a streetscape? A view of your kitchen? Maybe your cozy arts nook? You name it. Let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Please come back. We will do more landscapes and patterns and lots more in our art journals. So appreciate your time. Thanks again, everybody. Have a wonderful week.